And just so you know, folks, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and let me know as I'm going through. I want you to, so you don't forget what we're going to ask you. If it's something that's being, that I'll talk about in the future or the presentation, I'll just say hold that thought, okay? So I want everyone to engage if they want. I have no problem doing so. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So, all right, my name is Michael Carbone. This is Jerry Edelson. We're partners. We've been doing this for, this is my 3rd year in the tax appeal business. Going from real estate, we had a brokerage market. We saw a decline, and what started me in this business, I guess you could say, is I started doing it as a charity right here in Madrona Village. I moved over from Ingleside, wanted there's good schools here at Rays Lake, wanted to pay the high taxes, believe it or not, until 2 or 3 years later, they were spiraling out of control. So what I started to do, started knocking on people's doors. There's a lot of foreclosures happening in my subdivision, so I started knocking on folks' doors. Hey, you know, my name's Michael Carbone. I'd like to lower your real estate property taxes. And the whole premise behind that was, if I figured I could get a huge group of people to do it and be one voice, your big voice for, you know, when it comes to election time, for that vote. And through our efforts the last 2 years, here at Madrona, Bradford Place, which is a 55-year-old community, and Madrona Ridge, I did about 150 appeals last year, and we have over 1,000 homes in those 3 subdivisions. The county decided to lower the whole entire community, whether you appealed it or not. That was the effort, and it was an awesome effort to achieve. So moving forward, what got me going here, I'm on a school board. I got elected to, I was a write-in candidate. Had no one contested myself. Jerry's in the library board for Fremont. I'm here at Rays Lake at B46. And that's kind of another reason why I got involved in this, because I started realizing where all of our tax dollars were going, kind of put it together, and wanted to talk about it some more. So, I'll do a quick overview. So basically, I'm going to go over the tax bill, you know, the tax bill, the one you get in the mail every year. I'll go over the assessor's roll, the taxing bodies, and then just talk a little about the local governments, what's going on. Okay? So here we go. Here's a tax bill. I'm sure we've all seen one. Believe it or not, most people, when I sit down in their home, they never took the time to look at it, because a lot of times what we do is we have an escrow through our bank, and we just pay our mortgage a month, and when we get that, all the bank pays, and we don't actually look at our bill. So that's one of the reasons I found why people had not seen this. So on the left-hand side, you have all your taxing bodies. Okay. The next thing is your rate. I call it's your levy rate or tax rate. And when you add them all up, and this is actually I forget what township this is. It is Avon Township. So the rate here at Avon is 11.205. That's what you're paying on your assessed value of your property. If you go follow that arrow to the right, what you do is you'll see a taxable valuation. And what they do is outside your exemptions, that's what your assessed value of your property is. We'll take that, multiply it by your tax rate to get your fair market value of your property. Which you'll see, I'm sorry, they'll give you your tax bill, which is $69.32. For a home that's worth $203,000. So it's a lot of tax for a little bit of home. So that's that part of it. That's one tax on the tax bill. What happened last year, we have a thing called a state multiplier. It's been there since 1991. It's always been 1.0, so that's the equalized value. What happened last year is they raised it by 1.0199%. And how they came about that number is they took the whole entire county, and let's say they collect all the revenue from real property, and they said they had $100 as a budget. What happens is it went down to $98, which is a 2% drop. Well, the Department of Revenue comes in and says, well, all your taxing bodies are going to go be hurting unless we fix that number. So what they do is they equalize it across the county, so it is a fair tax, but they raise it by 2% to capture that money back, so the taxing bodies can keep their full budgets. Does that make sense? Right, so what happened is they raised it back to $100, or if you want to be exact, 0.0199, which is basically 2%. So what that means, now I'm going to have Jerry add this up. We're going to take the land value, okay, which is $11,764, and the building value, which is $54,773. And if you think about it, it says that if you add it, it's $67,861. Actually, the number is 66,537. If you add those two numbers, what happens is they multiply that multiplier. And what happens, in essence, they're artificially inflating your assessed value of property, 2 percentage points. And what that does, it gives you 2% more revenue on this side. A lot of people don't understand that. Whether you agree with it, I don't agree with it, because we don't artificially inflate our home values and our budgets in our homes, do we?
No, but they do.
Right. Well, it's basically buying on credit is what you're doing in a sense, but we got to pay it back. So anyone have questions as far as the state multiplier, you get it? Does that make sense to everyone? I know usually IRA gets people a little bit higher when they hear that, because it's like, anyhow, here's a nice visual. When you take a dollar bill and you split it up all the different ways with taxing bodies, you have your county, which gets about 7%, your city is about 10%, your schools, 68 to 72% of our real estate tax dollars goes to the schools. Parks, fire, townships, forest reserve, and others are all about 3%, and you have it's about 18%. Here is an interesting thing I found through Forbes magazine. This was the top, what is this?
It's the top 50, but right now it shows 50.
Okay, these are the top 50, what I had is the top 50 counties in the United States for properties that are highest taxed by county. Illinois, or Lake County, is 14th. Out of all 50 states, we're 14th. We have 102 counties in Illinois, so just imagine if you multiply that by 50. We're 14th in the country. Median income is about $6,169 for the home. That was a 3-year average. If you look at the first number there, $6,169.
Yeah.
Okay, you go. Where Americans pay most property tax, Midwest. We've held that for over 5 years. Lake County is the highest tax county in the entire Midwest.
Amen.
And they kind of give you some more details where they're a little bit higher, but it's about $6,100 for the annual property tax. Percentage above the national average on property tax is 413%. Think about that, it's insane. Median household income is $80,000. Minimum bill is about $300,000.
Try again.
Let me laugh a little louder.
Okay, where Americans pay most of property tax, again, they break it down again in the Midwest, 6,052. That was on January 10th of this, a year and a half ago now. Here, this was May of 11th of 2011. What this study was done, they took the 10 worst states to live in.
I saw
You saw this one? The 10 worst states to live in, and so out of those 10 states, Lake County is ranked 3rd by county to live in this area. And it's because what's happening is we used to be the richest. When I was in school in the 90s, in college, and took my poli-sci courses, I remember we were the richest county per capita in the entire country. We held that for so many years. Something changed. I don't know the answer, but something happened in the last 15 years. Okay, so we're going to talk about the assessor's role. Assessor's role, he has the power to raise and lower our assessments. He's elected by the people. He is equal with separate powers. But I thought they put that out. But there's really, I just like to say there's no fair representation. The reason why I say that is he's bound, first of all, if you look at our county, we had over 18,000 appeals last year. This year they're expecting 25,000 to 32,000 appeals. That's a lot. Here at Avon we have, well, outside of some of the things that we've had in the last 8 to 10 years now, with our assessor, it's a little bit out of, what's a good way of putting it? It hasn't been in line with other townships, so we've had issues there. But there's 5 or 6 people in that office. How can they manage all these homes and assess them? And the way I like to kind of describe it, an assessor gets a budget, like we would in a home or in our business. Let's say he gets $100. Well, you can go and spread the $100 out however you want throughout your township. But once that $100 is used, you can't help the other folks. So from my understanding, the design of an assessor is to try to make an even balance around and find those pockets and adjust them every year. If you have a good assessor, they can get it done. But we haven't had that opportunity as far as I'm concerned. So, and the other thing is, I think, at least for my experience, was growing up, you want to buy a home, and we always saw this this increase of valuation of our property every year, about 3 to 5%, right? And that's what we saw in the 90s, and even early 2000s. So we had a crash. As we see this, the increase of a property, in the background, we've always seen these taxes increase, and we just never noticed it. You know, it's always been going up. Every year we thought, we might only go up $20, $30, $40, $50, or $100, but we knew our property values were going up. Now that we have this decline in the last 4 or 5 years, why are we seeing decreases? Our assessor's knocking you down 3, 4, 5%, but you're still seeing increases, and that's why a lot of people are confused right now. They're saying, why is my value still going down? My assessor might lower my assessment, but my property tax is still going up. Because they've always been doing this. You know, you go around and ask, on the school board, I've asked my board, and I've asked a lot of the boards in the township, whether it be library or village or park, when's the last time you froze a levy? Meaning, when's the last time you just didn't take a pay raise? Or, not a pay raise, I'm sorry, a tax increase. When's the last time you lowered that levy? Or lowered the taxes? Yes, Haynesville did, and so did Sam Yingling in Avon. You're seeing it in the smaller, because it's easy with your budgets, I don't think they're as high as a school. Our budget's $49 million. But that's, someone said out there, you're right, it is the schools. The education, a lot of money goes there, we want good schools, but they got to tighten their belts as well like we do in our own homes. So, what's next? Taxing bodies. So we have our taxing bodies like the Park District and the Village. They have the power to raise and lower taxes as well. As I showed earlier, that tax rate, or levy rate as they call it, I like to call it tax increase because I've only seen since I've been owning a property in the last 12 years. They're elected by the people as well. They have equal but separate powers. So here we go. Here's a budget. All budgets are cyclical throughout time. They go up and down, right? And this arrow pointing down is going to show how our budgets in our households decrease. I think all of our homes we try to strive to decrease our budget so we can do things with that. You know, small business corporations do the same thing, and I'm going to explain why. Households reduce their budgets to buy goods, TV, couch, car. They like to have their savings, maybe vacation, purchase, make investments, and then they'll also have the emergency fund. That's what we do, right? Would everyone agree to that? And that's what we do with our leftover money. It's called disposable income. Small business corporations do the same thing. They like to, when they try to reduce their budget, they'll expand, they'll increase production, hire more employees, invest in research and technology, pay dividends to investors, and they'll reward their employers through raises and bonuses to show their appreciation. That's how the private world works. Here's another budget. It goes cyclical through time. We're going to show the arrow going up. It's an increase in the taxing bodies. It's happening every year as we're seeing it. Now, as Georgianne said, Avon's reducing it. You're going to start seeing that, but in the past, you really had. I looked and I researched it, and you can't find it. But you are seeing it now. Things are starting to come in line. But if their budget increases every year, then I would think the community is growing. Wouldn't you think? They'd have more services that they have to offer through commercial and industrial and residential. Right now, everything's flat. In Lake County alone, this was last summer, they were saying there's going to be 0% net growth for the next 5 years. This was last summer, so a year ago. And now, because it's the state of Illinois, increased the state income tax by 66%, and the corporate tax, which we are the highest corporate tax rate in the entire world, Illinois is. They raised it from, what was it, to 5.5%, I believe, which was a 42% increase. And we have businesses leaving and fleeing Illinois, going across the border. So here's an example. So let's take an example of 500 homes. We'll take the subdivision. You're going to inquire about 12 teachers, 2 police officers, a fireman. We get some road maintenance workers. What happens is you build that community, and there's upfront money that comes up to that developer. They'll get that up, and they call it new money. You develop or negotiate that, and then you'll get that surplus. And, but when you think about it, you look at it, we already have the fire department, the police department, and schools built, right? So why would you see an increase in your tax as far as your real property? It should level off. All you're paying for is more employees. The building's already paid for.
Does the school district work on a zero-based budget, or do they work on a